If Trump thinks pulling funding from the NEA is going to stop artists, he's got another thing coming to him. I'm back with part 2 on the NEA and a history of federal funding of the arts in the US. You see this? We have never had federal funding. Look, the green is the federal funding, and the red is state funding, the blue is local funding. I think we'll make it. But let's review why Americans historically don't want to fund the arts and how Republican presidents have slashed the NEA ever since Reagan, and how basically art is another tool that politicians use to divide us, and why that is. In the 1950s, state-funded arts and radio was viewed as communistic and undemocratic. Americans were basically terrified that their tax dollars going toward radio and arts funding was communistic. And not much has changed since. There's quite an apathy towards arts funding and a resistance towards arts funding publicly. I don't know, do you agree? Do you feel this? What do you think about this? Changed when elite billionaires like Nelson Rockefeller got together and pushed for a Ministry of Arts and Culture, and that was when the NEA was formed in 1965. So in the 60s, we got some federal funding of arts, and then this became the blueprint of state funding in each state to have an arts council. We also achieved getting public radio funded and spearheaded, and thereby we got PBS and NPR, which were also slashed this week. And so once we got this funding, the argument of how the funding should be dispersed began. So of course, if the radio isn't serving a political party, they want to do away with it. And if the arts aren't being funded the way the public wants, or it can be used as a tool to dissuade the public to vote either way, is another issue. But all of this does not address the basic apathy of the public towards arts funding. And therein lies the paradox, because it doesn't serve the politicians to keep the public educated about the arts or arts funding. It doesn't serve them to have a public that cares or wants arts. But let's go back to how the argument began after we got the funding for arts and radio. So now that all the states had their own arts councils, the NEA was sending funding to each state, and then we had some federal and some state funding for the arts. The argument about how that funding was being dispersed began. And unfortunately, we have not really progressed, even though the state arts agencies continue to send money to local art orgs and communities. So the first ideology was elite favoritism. So elitism in arts funding, meaning that major institutions and orchestras were funded, mostly in bicoastal cities. And the opposing view was that not enough funding was getting to a diverse array of